Every single day, millions of parents walk through their front door, and what happens next is changing their baby's brain forever. If your baby runs to the door when they hear your footsteps, scientists now believe that tiny moment holds one of the biggest secrets in human development. It's not just excitement, it's not just habit. What your baby is doing in that moment is something far more profound than most parents ever realize. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see your baby's greeting in a completely different light, and you'll never walk through that door the same way again. Let's go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of your story, but the beginning of every human story. Thousands of years ago, a human baby that was left alone didn't survive. Being close to a caregiver wasn't a preference. It was survival. So the brain, your baby's brain, evolved to solve this problem. It built an invisible system, a system designed to keep your baby close to you at all costs. Scientists call this system attachment, and it is running inside your baby right now, every single minute of the day. But here's what most people get wrong. They think attachment is just about love, about warmth, about cuddles. Attachment is actually a biological communication system, and your baby uses it to ask one question over and over every single day. That question is, are you there? Are you coming back? And can I count on you? And the moment you walk through that door, your baby isn't just happy to see you. They are running a biological test, a test to see whether you are a safe base, whether you are reliable, whether this world can be trusted. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Psychologist John Bowlby spent his entire career studying exactly this, and what he discovered shook the scientific world. Bowlby found that the way a baby is responded to, especially in those tiny everyday moments, literally shapes the architecture of their growing brain, not their emotional development, not just their personality, their actual brain structure. The wiring, the connections between neurons that will carry them through their entire life. And this is why that door greeting, that tiny, seemingly ordinary moment, carries extraordinary weight. Because in that split second when your baby hears the door, something extraordinary begins happening inside their nervous system. Something most parents walk right past without ever knowing. Their heart rate actually changes. Their cortisol levels, the stress hormone, begin to shift. Their eyes widen. Their motor system fires. All before you even say a word. Your baby's entire body is preparing for a reunion that evolution has trained them to need more than almost anything else. But here's the question that researchers started asking, the question that led to one of the most groundbreaking experiments in the history of child psychology. What actually happens to babies who get this greeting response versus babies who don't? The difference is nothing short of extraordinary. And in part 2, we're going to look at exactly what the science found, including the famous experiment that changed everything we thought we knew about babies. But before we get there, I want you to think about the last time your baby ran to greet you, because now you know they weren't just saying hello. They were running one of the most sophisticated programs the human brain has ever developed. And it starts the moment they hear your footsteps. In 1969, a researcher named Mary Ainsworth walked into a room with a mother, a baby, and a door. And what she discovered in that room rewrote everything. The experiment was simple. The mother would leave the room. A stranger would enter. And then the mother would come back. They called it the strange situation. And the question Ainsworth was asking was not about the separation. It was entirely about the reunion. Because Ainsworth understood something that most people still miss today. A baby's reaction when you leave tells you very little, but how they greet you when you return tells you everything. What Ainsworth documented across hundreds of babies changed the entire field. She found that babies didn't all greet their mothers the same way. They fell into distinct patterns. Pattern 1. The baby sees the parent return, and they go to them. They might be upset, but they let the parent comfort them. They settle. They return to play. Ainsworth called this secure attachment, and she found it in about 60% of babies. These were children whose caregivers had been consistently responsive, not perfect, just consistently present. But then there was pattern 2. The baby sees the parent return, and they don't go to them. They continue playing, or they look away, as if the return didn't matter at all. This wasn't independence. This was something far more complicated. These babies had learned, unconsciously, that reaching out didn't bring comfort. so they stopped reaching out. Ainsworth called this avoidant attachment, and here's the part that will stay with you. Those babies were not calm. Their heart rates told a completely different story. On the inside, these babies were experiencing massive stress. They had simply learned to hide it, to suppress it, because showing it had never worked before. And then there was pattern 3, the hardest one to watch. The baby sees the parent return, and they run to them, but then they push them away. They want comfort and they resist it at the same time. Ainsworth called this anxious or ambivalent attachment. These were babies whose caregivers had been inconsistent, sometimes responsive, sometimes not, and the baby's brain could never predict which version would show up. Think about what that does to a developing brain. When you cannot predict your source of safety, your nervous system never fully settles. It stays in a permanent state of alert. Now, here's where this becomes something every parent needs to understand. Because the patterns Ainsworth documented in babies, they don't stay in childhood. Researchers followed these same babies for decades, and the patterns they developed in response to that door, to that reunion moment, showed up again and again in their adult relationships. How they handled conflict, whether they could ask for help, whether they trusted that the people they loved would actually come back. It all traces back to these early patterns. But here's the part of the research that most people never hear about. And it is the most important part, the most hopeful part. The patterns are not fixed. The brain is not locked. Because of something called neuroplasticity, your baby's brain is actively being shaped right now. With every interaction, every return, every reunion. Which means that every time you walk through that door, every single greeting, you are literally writing code into your child's developing nervous system. Not just with grand gestures, not just with the big moments, but with the ordinary ones, the quiet ones, the ones that feel too small to count. Researchers found a phrase for this. They called it serve and return. Your baby sends a signal, you respond. That exchange, that simple back and forth is building the architecture of their brain. And when that exchange happens at the door, when your baby reaches out and you reach back, something registers in the deepest part of their brain. A message more powerful than any word. That message is, you exist, you matter, and I will come back. 3 sentences, delivered without a single word. Just a door opening, just a face turning, just a body saying, I'm here. But here's what we haven't talked about yet. What happens when the door opens and the parent is distracted, or stressed, or just not fully there? Because that is where the story gets even more important. We left off with a parent walking through a door and a baby reaching upward, and nothing filling that space between them. Let's stay there for a moment, because this is where it matters most. Researchers have a name for this moment. They call it a missed bid. And it turns out, missed bids are not occasional accidents. For most families, they happen dozens of times a day. Now, before any parent feels guilt, stop. Because that is not what this is about. Research also shows that you don't need to respond to every single bid. You just need to get it right most of the time. Dr. Ed Tronic's research found that even the most attuned parents misread their baby only about 30% of the time. The magic isn't in perfection, it's in the repair. Repair is when a parent notices the misconnection and comes back to it, turns toward their baby, reconnects, and in that return, something remarkable happens in the baby's brain. The baby's nervous system doesn't just return to baseline, it actually goes higher. Researchers found that repaired connections produce a stronger sense of security than connections that were never broken at all. Think about what that means. Struggle followed by reconnection. That pattern is actually what teaches a baby that the world can be trusted, that things can be made right. So, when your baby runs to that door, they are not simply expressing joy. They are exercising a biological trust, a deep, ancient knowing that you, specifically you, are their safe harbor. And here is the insight that ties everything together. The door, your door, is not just a door, it has become a symbol, a daily test of one of the most fundamental questions in human experience. Will you come back? That is the question. Every animal that has ever depended on a caregiver has asked it, and every human baby alive today is asking it through every reach, every cry, every run toward the door. And the answer you give, not with words, but with your body, your face, your presence, is writing a story that your child will carry inside them for the rest of their life. Now, Let's talk about something practical. Because knowing the psychology is one thing, but what do you actually do differently? Starting tomorrow. Starting tonight. Step 1. The 10-second reunion. When you walk through that door, before anything else, give your baby 10 full seconds of complete, undivided presence. Nothing else exists in those 10 seconds. No phone, no bag, no to-do list running in your head. Just your face turned toward theirs. Just your eyes saying, I see you. I'm here. I came back. Step 2. Match their energy first. If your baby is excited, let yourself be excited for just a moment. Your nervous system and theirs are in constant conversation, and they feel when you're truly tuned in. Step 3. Say their name. It sounds almost too simple. But hearing their own name from your voice activates specific regions of your baby's brain and signals you are known, you are recognized, you are real. These 3 things, 10 seconds of presence, matching their energy, saying their name, are not grand gestures. They are small.